everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you're here joining us live, comment in the chat box and say hi. If you're new here, I'm Vanessa. I am a YA fantasy, paranormal, and horror writer and book publisher. And on this channel, I talk about books, writing, and all things related to storytelling. And today's live stream is part of my monthly Writing Diversity series. This is a series I created to help writers learn how to write diverse characters. So in today's live stream, I'm here chatting with David, who is a motivational speaker, podcaster, assistant teacher, and disability advocate. And today we're going to be chatting about cerebral palsy and what writers should know. So, David, do you want to say hi and give everyone like a brief introduction about yourself?
Thank you for having me on the show. Well, as you mentioned, I used to be a former assistant teacher. And I work as a youth advocate with students. I work with students on the behind the scenes aspect. So I work with them, outside of the classroom. I provide them mentoring. I provide them, with any services they might need, personally, what's going on in their lives and help them succeed, not just academically, but um, as an individual as well. And I also do podcasting. I was born with cerebral palsy early on in life. I couldn't read, write, or walk. I struggled doing basic things, but thankfully, with the power of positivity and the good people around me, I became successful, and now I'm able to inspire others around the world.
That's awesome. So, I'm so glad you could be here joining us today. Um, so, before we get started, one thing that I usually always do at the start of all my interviews is I like to go over a quick disclaimer. So, if you guys have watched my interviews before, I always say this, but I want to remind everyone watching that, no group is ever a monolith. And so, David is here graciously sharing with us his experience as someone who has cerebral palsy. And hopefully, this will help other writers out there who are writing characters with cerebral palsy. But keep in mind that his experiences do not represent everyone with cerebral palsy. So, always, always, always make sure you do your research well and you get sensitivity readers for your stories. So, that's the disclaimer I always start with. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get into the questions. So my first question that I have for you, David, basically simple, just what is cerebral palsy?
So, cerebral palsy, when you define it, it varies from person to person. So, it could be milder or up to severe. And to tell you a little bit about what I have spastic hemiplegia cerebral palsy, which is basically okay. So, CP happens due to lack of oxygen to the brain at birth. So, when I was born, I had underdeveloped lungs, spent 3 months in the hospital as doctors began to finally diagnose me, and as I got older, I started seeing that my right side was weaker than my left side. So, Hemi being only one side, my one side was my right side. So, as far as from that, I was confined to a wheelchair for the first couple years of my life until I was 8 years old. Doctors had said I had no possibility of walking, doing anything normal. They thought I had the most severe kind of CP out there, but turns out they were completely wrong, And fortunately, because of my parents and their willing and their drive to see me want to achieve more potential than what doctors thought, um, I eventually found what I actually had.
Awesome, cool. Um, don't you just love it when doctors are wrong, when you can prove them wrong? Like,
Yeah.
my doctors told my parents with my form of disability, I would not live to see 18 years old. And I'm like, I'm turning 33 in October this year. So apparently, we're proving doctors wrong. So I love it. um, so my next question was let's see here. When you were diagnosed with your disability, what was it like for you? Like, how old were you, and do you remember much about it? How you felt when you were diagnosed?
I don't honestly. I don't remember uh, being diagnosed at all because I was so young. But I do remember going
Okay.
through the notions of physical therapy, of going through hours of frustration trying to learn how to walk, read or write, sitting at the table during dinner trying to do homework, and my mom is constantly saying, "Yo, you can do this, you can do this," and I just constantly frustrated, having these meltdowns, and we'd sit for hours because my mom's like, "You're," my mom's like, "We're not gonna do anything else fun until you finish up your homework." So I spent hours just struggling, but I made it through, and uh, you know, and honestly, if I could remember, I would have been, possibly surprised, maybe upset because, I would have felt different. If I felt different from everybody else. I would feel sad, but honestly, I don't remember. So, I mean, I could go by assumptions, but that wouldn't really help. But
Mm,
I could just go by personal experiences, what I went through as far as growing up was concerned.
yeah. So, going off of how you felt growing up, can you talk a little bit about that? How it, how you felt about it? Um,
Growing up with CP was very interesting. I mean, I've met so many kinds of individuals. That some individuals were mean. Some individuals were kind of confused as to what it was, because I've had individuals come up to me and say, "Is CP something that's related to something mentally that affects you mentally?" Because people used to, as I was growing up, people used to assume, "Oh, you have cerebral palsy. Well, you must be real delayed in doing, things mentally. Like, when it came to reading or writing or walking, people assumed that everything was like at a point 0.5 speed, like you go so slow. And that's not really the case because, like I said, every part of CP is different. Um, I There were times where I felt defeated, times where I felt like I was lost. I didn't feel accepted. Um, but as I grew up and I kept seeing people kind of change their mindset and their perspective on what CP was, because I would take the time as I was going through each grade level and every obstacle in my life to explain to people, this is what my CP is. I'm no different than anybody else. What makes me different is how I do things, but I still get it done. Regardless whether it takes me 5 minutes or 3 hours, I get things done. And the most important thing that I remember is you have to stay positive throughout the whole experience. Otherwise, if you let your disability manifest who you really are, you'll fall behind.
wow, that's good. Wow. Um, so now, I know in preparing for this interview, I was kind of reading up and looking up some things about CP. And I've read that with it, many people tend to have a co-occurring condition, such as epilepsy or autism, or things like that. So I was wondering, are there any co-occurring conditions you have And if so, how has it impacted your life?
I don't really have any co-occurring conditions unless you count spasticity. Like, there's times where I could be very sensitive to loud noises, and I jump, and so that's why I can't really drive or anything of that nature. And as far as how it's impacted my life is sometimes, to do certain activities, go out with friends and stuff, or just do basic things can be very difficult because I have to depend on public transit. And you know how public transit goes when you're somebody with a disability, it's a nightmare. It's a real nightmare.
Yeah.
And fortunately, do have some friends that sometimes, when we go out, they'll come pick me up, drive me there, drive me back, and I'm really grateful, for having friends and family like that.
Yeah, well, that's great. Um, so, what I know you said earlier that you didn't walk for the first few years of your life. Do you use any mobility aids now, or any devices that help you get around?
I just use AFOs, and then I use a crutch to get around.
Okay, cool. But so you haven't used the wheelchair since you were a child then?
Not fully, but I only use the wheelchair when there's times where it's needed, like if I go to theme parks or any place that I have to walk long distances, then I'll use a chair.
Okay, so long distances. Okay, yeah. Um, and I've seen some people with cerebral palsy say the same thing, like they can do short distances but longer, then they'll use a wheelchair for that. Um, so my next question is, this is going to be different for everyone in the disability community, but it goes to language. So some people prefer person first language, some people prefer identity first. So do you prefer a person with a disability, or to say disabled person, and why would you pick one?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. I've never been asked that before. But if I had to pick one, I would say person with a disability because I feel like we all we all should be identifiable not by the label, but that we are disabled. Disability is an umbrella term. It's such a broad term. There's so many different disabilities, and I feel like if we are going to identify someone, well, in my opinion, it should be person with disability.
Yeah. So I know that's a question I tend to always ask anyone in the disability community, because some prefer disabled person and some, like you said, prefer person with the disability. So I always say, always make sure you respect the person you're talking to and refer to them how they want to be referred.
That's that's
Um,
really that's really good. I really appreciate you asking that question.
yeah. Let's see. So, in what ways? So this one goes back to kind of growing up, your childhood, and kind of even now, sort of. But in what ways do you think you were uh, treated differently because of your disability? And how do you think that has made you feel?
Um, in what ways that was I treated differently? So
Mhm.
I would say, let's see. It's been such a long time. Like, when I was in school, it's pretty much everything's pretty much normal. I grew up normal. I mean, I went through, we went through typical phases of, being made fun of and stuff, and that's normal for everybody with a disability. But I grew up pretty much normal. There were times where, I feel like isolated because I felt so different, but at the same time, like I said, as I was growing up, I started to realize who I am, and I became more accepting of myself and realizing, I'm just who I am, and you have to just not let it get to you. Not let it bother you. Brush it off. Um, enjoy every moment you have, because people do change. I had bullies in school that uh, eventually got to see who I really am as a person, and their mindset changed. They're like, "Oh, but wait a minute! I've been making fun of this kid for years, not realizing that he's just like me, except the only difference is he walks differently, he talks differently, and he looks different, but his mindset is just like mine, you know?
Yeah. Cool. Um, were there any what about with the adults in your life, teachers, parents, other adults? Did you feel like they ever treated you differently, or were, I guess, different because of your disability? Or do you think that it was mainly treated the same as any other kid?
I find that question pretty hilarious, because as I was growing up, every time a teacher or someone would say something so ironic, the first person that would kind of jump on to, I guess, to fend for me was my stepmom. Because let me give you an example. So my senior year of high school, we're doing the meet the teacher, at the beginning of the year before school starts. I walk into my science teacher's classroom, and I go to introduce myself, and my mom's there with me, and she's just this like monotone. Her attitude was like, I don't get, I don't really care about this student. I don't care about his needs and this and that. And it's funny because my mom and I exchange looks, and she looks at me like she's just such a Debbie Downer, like like eh, and it's like, and then as the year progressed, like we dealing with that one teacher was like, why are they teaching if they don't want to include everyone? Like, what's up with, if you're gonna teach, you're supposed to be able to include and accept everyone, not just you know put the one kid to the side and let everybody else, you know, enjoy the experience. But I didn't let it bother me. I just did my own thing.
Okay.
But as far as parents and things like that, my parents were awesome. Like, I had no family was great. I had
That,
no any bad experiences with them at all.
that's good. That's good. And my next question that kind of goes along with this one, which you started answering a little bit, was in what ways do you think your childhood was the same as other kids without disabilities? I know you kind of mentioned the whole bullying thing. We all kind of go through that bullying phase. But is there anything you can think of where, you instances where it was like, yeah, I'm just like one of
Uh,
another.
oh yeah, I like hanging out with friends, swimming in the pool, playing video games. Uh I used to play sports, so I was a three-sport athlete when I was growing up, through my childhood into my high school years. I just tried to do things as normal as possible, as any child could. Just with there might be things that I needed assistance with, but that didn't stop me from wanting to do some things that other kids wanted to do in their childhood.
Yeah.
Like they
Okay.
say, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yep. Yep. It's awesome. Um. So let's see. There's one comment here I was looking at. Writing RN2 says, I know an ICU RN who has CP and he works better than an RN who doesn't have CP. He's pretty awesome. I wish people would stop treating disabled people like they can't do anything. It's so rude. That's very true. It's very true.
That's very true.
Um, disabled people with disabilities are capable of so many things. So, um, let's see here. So, let's see, where did I leave off? Yeah, so my next question, I had taken a look at some of your YouTube videos and interviews, which were pretty cool. And you seem like such a, super positive, happy person. And so I kind of wanted to ask, how has growing up with this disability affected your mental health throughout your life?
Well, if we can go back to kind of the bullying aspect, as a kid, like I mentioned earlier, as a kid, every kid was bullied. Um, as far as like my mental health is concerned, I've never let it since I've learned to accept it. I haven't let it bring me down. I don't let it bring me down. I don't let it discourage me. I tell people what you see here in front of your eyes, what you're looking at, is me, is the real me. I'm not changing. There's no cure for it. This is me. This is my disability. And if you can't accept that, then you have to keep on walking. You can't let something as simple as your disability uh, manifest your mind, because you're more than capable of doing things. Um, as I mentioned, I always tell people that disability is a label that people gives you in society. It's what you do with that disability that counts.
Yeah. Wow. So, how has it taken you a while to get to that point where you tell people this, or you have felt this way, or has it always been this is how you've always felt, how you've always looked at it?
Oh no, I spent years trying to find myself. I felt lost. I felt like, well, I always ask myself, what am I besides somebody with cerebral palsy? And I always ask myself, who is who is David? Who is he? And I spent years while going through school and studying, trying to find out who I am. And it wasn't until the week before I graduated college, I graduated from UCF, that my mom had said something. She looked at me and said, you have this cane and you have this disability. It's a gift that was given to you. Take advantage of it and use it to the best of your ability. You only have one body, one mind, and one you in your life. And if you have the ability to inspire people and to change people's lives, go for it. And that's when I realized, you know what? This is who I am. If people can't accept me for who I am, then they can keep on walking.
Yeah, it's a really good attitude to have about it. So that's great. Um, let's see. So for your disability with CP, cerebral palsy, were there was there ever a time where you were involved in any treatment programs or any therapy? And if so, what was that process like?
I was involved for a very short time in physical therapy. You know, used to go to an office, get my therapy done a couple of times a week when I was growing up. And then as I became an adult, as you know, getting services, especially physical therapy, is a nightmare and it's super difficult. Not only that, but I realized that some of these physical therapy organizations don't seem to help, because the last time I went to therapy, they just gave me a piece of paper and told me to walk, and then they charged me for the services. And I'm like, so this is what physical therapy is like when you're an adult. Like, they just don't bother to help you. They just give you a piece of paper and have you do it on your own. And I'm like, you know what? Let me invest in a gym. Now, let's go a little bit before that. Before that, I did hyperbaric uh, therapy, which is basically, I went up to Canada when I was 8 years old, and I had this therapy that was in an oxygen tank, you know, and they had us wear these kind of like these space helmets, kind of sort of, if you can picture it, and they were connected to a tube, and that tube would bring in oxygen to the brain. And after about 8 weeks, I was able to bend my right arm, which is my arm that's spastic, all the way down. I was able to move it, use it as normal. My right eye was straighter than it usually is, and it worked, and it worked. But it was a therapy that you had to be very fortunate to receive an opportunity, because not many kids got that opportunity. And it was up in Canada. Canada has this camp called Ability Camp. I don't know if it's there still, but it was worth it for the time I was there, being. And yeah, I mean, as far as the physical therapy, after a couple years of doing that, I said, you know what? Let me just invest in the gym. I'll get involved in fitness, and that's how I'll stay in shape.
Okay. Wow. That's that's so cool, and that's interesting to hear about um, that therapy in Canada and what it did. Um, I've never heard of one like that, so that's cool. Um, let's see here. My next question was about so your environment. What let me see. What sort of barriers or limitations have you encountered in your environment?
Would it be kind of like my home environment, or like just a social environment, or what kind of environment
It
do
could
you?
be both. It could be home and out in the public, going out and about. Um,
Okay. So, as far as home, everything is set up to where I can pretty much manage everything on my own. Like, I can manage pretty much everything except for like yard work and stuff. Oh, oh.
yeah, don't worry about it.
Uh, except for like yard work and stuff, I have somebody cut the yard and help out, family help out with me. But other than that, I pretty much do everything on my own. As far as home life, socially is not very difficult either. It's just a matter of getting around from place to place.
Okay. Um, do you? I know earlier you said you have to use public transportation sometimes to go to get around out. Have you run into any uh, problems or barriers when it comes to taking public transportation anywhere?
Not really. I use paratransit, so they'll come pick me up in front of the house and then take me to where I need to go, and then take me back. The only issue with paratransit is it takes so long to get around. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, there's times where I'm on the ride for like an hour and a half, 2 hours just to get to one place, and sometimes I'll get there and like I have to leave in like 30 minutes. Like, like you know, you schedule it for a certain time, and they don't even get there. They'll sometimes get there past the window.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that's interesting. You're in Florida. For anyone who's watching, you're in Florida. I'm in Arizona, but it sounds like our paratransit systems are pretty much the same, because I've had the same issues in the past where it's like they either sometimes are past the 30-minute window, um, time that they're supposed to pick you up. And then when you get on it, you're on there for sometimes forever, it feels like. Um, so, yeah, I wish they had a better system, better way to do it, but it's what we got for now.
Yeah.
So, let's see. My next question, still about your environment. So, can you share the ways that you've um, had to get creative or adapt your environment to make it work for you?
Let's see. Hmm. Great question. Well, you know, when it comes to, I would say I'm gonna start in the kitchen. So in the kitchen, I'm one of those people. I like to cook a lot. I like to make food. Cook my own things. What I learned is I my balance is not that good. So for me, the stove is out. Now, what am I going to replace the stove with to actually make food? So I typically use a rice cooker or a pasta cooker. I have a George Foreman grill. I have a stovetop oven, and I try to not use as much as the microwave, but I only use it when necessary. But so all those things together help me avoid using the stove, because, as you know, someone with not such good balance, if I were to drop a huge pot of like hot food or water and it lands on the floor, it lands on you. Let's
Yeah,
face it, at the moment you're screwed. You're gonna get burned or you're gonna get hurt. And for me, it's all about safety. So I figured, why think about how are you gonna make things easier for you to cook while being safe? So that's how I actually went and what I did to manage that. Um, my house is pretty much, it's just one step and you go in, and it's pretty simple. Um, my my bathroom, I have like a little seat that I sit on. So when I go do, basic things, showering and stuff like that, I just go, sit on it and then swing over, and then I'll swing out, back out, and get out and just hop out. Um, my house is one story, so I don't have to go up any stairs, thankfully. But other than that, my environment's pretty much, it's all adaptive. Like, I have no difficult way to get around.
awesome. Yeah, that's really good when you can have somewhere that's adaptive to you. Um, right now, we're renting the house that I'm in, and so it's like um, I love the kitchen is super. The kitchen, the way the layout is and how everything is set up. This has been the most accessible kitchen I've ever had. Um, Bathroom could use a little work, but other than that, I'm like, I wish we could just buy this house because I, I love it. Um, let's see. So, I had this question, but you kind of answered it earlier. It was just, what drew you to fitness, which you kind of said it was from going from realizing the therapy, right? And like that you wasn't getting much out of it, so you decided to join the gym instead?
I could add that another reason
Mhm.
was my doctor had told me uh, before I joined the gym and physical therapy, I used to live a very sedentary lifestyle, so I didn't really do much physical activity. I'd be just sitting around all day, watching cartoons or TV or whatever, and not be moving as much. And the only moving I would do is just when I would play sports. And then my doctor said, I needed to do a bit more and be more active. And that's when he said, you got to be more active. Otherwise, when you get older, it's going to be more difficult for you to move, and eventually you'll end up back in the chair. And I said, I'm not going to end up back in the wheelchair, so I might as well start taking initiative and start, getting into fitness, even though I didn't like it at first. And then eventually I developed a passion for it. Now I enjoy it.
Nice. So, what sort of fitness activities do you engage in, and do you enjoy?
So I do a lot of jogging, walking, resistance bands training. I do medicine ball lifts. I do crunches, leg lifts, push-ups, and I used to do a little bit of Muay Thai and boxing over a couple years ago. So
Um, and what do you? I guess what do you love the most out of them?
I, honestly, I like anything that kind of keeps me active. I like all kind of sports and all kinds of physical activities. You know, I love to try new things. So
Cool. Um, I've never been much of a sports person, so I'm like, it's so cool seeing other people um, with disabilities engage in sports and stuff. Uh, let's see here. Where did I leave off? So when you do engage in sports and physical activities, are there any adaptive tools or equipment that you use when you engage in them?
uh, resistance bands and things like that, they're pretty much normal. But when it comes to doing lifts and stuff, I used to use a Smith machine, which is basically it's a machine that already has the weights already preset up. So all you got to do is just set up the weight, and then you can lift yourself. You don't need a spotter or anything like that. So I try to use those machines as much as possible. And then I do a lot of free weights, so a lot of things that I can grab on my own and do on my own. I learned the hard way that heavy lifting doesn't always equate results, especially when it comes to you and your disability. You have to listen to your body and you have to know your limitations. So mine was weight. So I know I can't lift 1,000 pounds. I know I can't lift 500 pounds, but can I do 50 to 100? Yeah, of course. But if you dumb it down to 50, then you can do more because you're doing more reps and you're still going to see the same results as if you were doing 500 pounds, 1,000 pounds. The only difference is you're doing it based off what your body can do as far as your limits, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Um, and so, speaking of your body's limits, um, do you tire more quickly or easily than other people might, or is that your endurance kind of average?
I've always had pretty good endurance because of the experience with cycling and with sports in general. I've never had an issue with cardio. Um, However, I've noticed over the years as I get older, your cardio does diminish and your energy does diminish, but I've never let it stop me from pushing towards my goals. So I'm like, and if you were to know me personally, I'm crazy like that. I like to push myself past my limits.
Yeah. I don't know why, but I feel like a lot of people with disabilities tend to do that. Like, we tend to push ourselves past our limits a lot. I don't know if that's such a good thing, but it's something I kind of tend to notice sometimes.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess it's a normal thing.
yeah. Um, so let's see. So going back to, you know, in the beginning, when I did the introduction and stuff, um, you mentioned how you've done motivational speaking, and you're a disability advocate. So, how did you get into this type of work, and why is it important for you?
I got into this based off personal experiences, um, what I've been through in my life, and realizing that, you know, we all have we all have a disability, and I see it as a gift. I see it as an opportunity to educate and inform people on not just what the disability is, but what can we do with it. And the most important thing is for me is as long as I educate people and they understand and they're willing to share and spread awareness about it. And not only that, but you're getting positive responses and reactions from it. That's what makes this type of work the best. As long as you get out there and you stay positive and you have that positivity radiate towards others.
Yeah, yeah. We definitely need more positivity in our world. So, as much as we can spread and have it radiate towards others, the better. Um, so let's see here. So then, other than um, fitness, motivational speaking, and disability advocacy, is there anything else that you are passionate about, or any other hobbies that you have that you enjoy?
Well, as I mentioned in the very beginning, right now I'm working as a youth advocate for at-risk youth. So what I do there is I help students that need kind of like a big brother figure in their life or someone to look up to, and I help them with not just academics, but how to be a better person, how to navigate through life's obstacles, and then give them the tools necessary so that then when they become older, they can become successful, responsible leaders of our community and our society. So, and that's something I'm very passionate about.
Cool. And so, how did you start doing that work? Was that through when you were doing the assistant teacher, or how did you get involved with that?
Well, that was first. It was through assistant teaching, and then through my motivational speaking. That I would do for which I've done for about 5 years now. Um, is how I really got into it because they needed an advocate and they saw, hey, he's an advocate. He can advocate for these kids and he's good at it. And so I decided to venture into it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'm glad they have someone like you to help them and mentor them. Um, let's see here. Um, my next question was, so oftentimes people with disability face discrimination. especially in the workplace. So, were there any times in your life that you felt discriminated against because of your disability, and how did you handle that?
I would say back when I was first starting regular education in school. So I started regular education in Puerto Rico. While I was in Puerto Rico, I faced a I faced discrimination when I was in first grade. Uh, I was going through school. I had a one-on-one at the time, and the teacher that I had at the time didn't want me in the classroom because I was too slow, even though I made straight A's and I was a very good student, never got in any trouble, had the grades, but the teacher was just not having it, didn't want me at the school. Um, that resulted in, well, my family and I leaving to move to Florida for a better life and education. And that was kind of like the first step into facing adversity and just realizing that there's going to be a lot of it along the way throughout my life, but eventually I'm going to learn how to handle it and how to be strong enough to not let it bother me.
Um, um, was so you said that was when you came to Florida after that, right? And you've been in Florida ever since then?
Yep, I've been in Florida for 23 years this year coming up.
Oh, okay. Um, and so I guess uh, I'm kind of thinking, like, how do you think? I'm trying to figure out how the question I wanted to ask, but I guess I'm kind of thinking of the environment, since we were talking about environment earlier, um, and I guess the differences, or if you've noticed any differences between, um, being in Florida for this long, and then, and also before that, like, has there, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, um, has there been, I guess, how has that uh, impacted or affected you, I guess, looking at the environment you were in before compared to now, if that makes sense.
I mean, there's
Not sure.
been, I can tell you this, there's been a lot of more opportunities here in Florida than I would have had in Puerto Rico. Because in Puerto Rico, they wanted to just kind of stop me in one spot, and when I went to Florida, doors opened as far as education, a lot of opportunities, not just for my family, but for myself and for my future self. And I'm kind of grateful to have made this move and to have left. But I always did return to Puerto Rico for vacation, to see family. But I would never return to live there due to the state that it's in, and it's not the best as far as education is concerned.
Okay. Um, okay, interesting. I've never been to Puerto Rico, but I know it's one of the places I've want to travel everywhere, but I don't know. Puerto Rico sounds like it would be interesting, but I've never been. So, like, um, let's see. So, okay. So my next question was about, and I, from what we have been talking about already. I think I might know how you would respond to this one. But my next question was about what's called inspiration porn. I'm not sure if you've heard that term
Oh
before,
yeah,
but
I've heard about it before.
yeah. So it's just, there's mixed feelings about it within the disability community. So, kind of, how do you feel about being seen as an inspiration simply for living your life with a disability?
Oh man, well, there it comes to a certain extent, like there's people that kind of push it, like, they'll be like, "You're an inspiration, like you're awesome," and like I've had instances where I do the most basic thing in the world, and they'll be like, "Oh man, that's so inspiration! Like you pulled out a chair, or you sat down, or you walked a ton today," and I'm like, "Well," and in my head, I'm like, I'm trying to stop myself, and I'm like, doesn't everybody walk? Doesn't everybody do the same things every day? Like, and I don't want to say it in front of the person because I'm very like respectful, but I'm usually thinking it, and it's like, come on, like I'm doing the same thing you're doing. Like, example, I'm in the gym lifting weights. I have people come up to me and like tell me, "Man, you inspire me to get in shape and work out and stuff." And of course, I appreciate the compliment and the kindness and the fact that they take the time to talk to me. But sometimes it's like I'm here just to work out, just like you. I get it. So, for me, it's mixed. It varies.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's how it is for some people as well. It kind of depends on, I think, is, what exactly that they're looking at as inspiration, you know. Um, so for, like you were saying, something so simple that everyone else is doing, it's like, well, doesn't everyone do this? Um, but yeah, I think it can definitely be mixed. Let's see.
There we go. Can you see
Hey,
me?
yes. Okay, you're unfrozen and you're back.
Yeah, my,
Awesome.
my internet was acting up. It's never happened before, so it's a first.
Oh, that's okay. I was like, yeah, technical difficulties. Sometimes these things happen and things freeze. Um, I'm glad you were able to get back on. If you weren't, I was just gonna kind of send you an email with the rest of the questions, and I would um, do a blog post with your answers for the rest. But I'm glad you were able to come back on. So,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
yay. Um, Awesome. So I trying to remember where we left off.
Let's see. We talked about inspiration, and I think that was the last question until it kind of stopped.
Yes, I think I had just asked you the
About
question about misconceptions
yeah,
that people
misconceptions.
have, and I think that's where it throws off. So, um, if you want to, we can pick up with that one.
Let's see. Misconceptions. That I'm not mentally capable enough to answer myself. Uh, what else? Um, there's also people that assume that me having CP is a total nightmare. They have to find a way to cure me. And I get the, "Oh, can I pray for you?" thing all the time when I'm in public. I get that a lot, and
Mhm.
and it's very interesting. I find it pretty hysterical. Um, let's see, you know that I can't do pretty much anything a normal person could do. That I always have to have somebody there helping me. That I always need help. But no,
Yeah.
and the way I tell people is, if I need help, I'll ask you for help. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, do you have people that ever think, oh, you must be in so much pain, or yeah, I've had that too. Um, and so, how do you respond to some? I know you shared one of your responses, like if you need help, you'll ask for it. How do you respond to some of the other misconceptions?
See, I have two different ways of responding to people. So for kids, I try to explain it to them in their terms and as kindly as possible as I can. For adults, it varies because as an adult, like when I hear an adult say something really asinine, it's like in my back of my mind, I'm like, are you really that uneducated that you had to ask me that? No, and there's times where I'm nice, or there's times where I can be very very stern and like very like really like come on, like you're an adult. Like you should, if you think about, you can research things, you can look things up, you can ask me directly, but don't just blatantly say, oh, do you have, like ask. That's all you have to do. Now, if you're a child or a kid, I understand you want to point and you want to ask what happened and you want to say this and you want to say that. Like I'm cool with that. You're a kid. I
Mhm,
understand you. I'll tell you and we'll learn about it together.
mhm. Yeah. Um, yeah, kids, it's all part of the learning process for them. But you're right, adults, it's like most of the time, it's like you really should know better, or at least, at the very least, know how to ask your question in an appropriate way. Um, so yeah, let's see here. The Okay, so I only had two more questions here. So if anyone watching the live stream, if you guys have any questions you want to ask for David, we'll do a Q&A session really quickly after these two questions. So you can pop your question into the chat box if you're watching. Um, so my next question here was, uh, what would you want writers to know when writing a disabled character, especially one with CP? What should they keep in mind, and what stereotypes do they need to get rid of?
Uh, be mindful of every individual as their CP is different. Um, Make sure that if you have any questions about the disability or what they do or what they've experienced in general, just ask, never assume. Um, if the if the individual with a disability needs help, uh, don't don't force it upon yourself immediately to help out. Let them ask you. Um, People with disabilities are everyday people, just like you and I. We may not do things as quickly as somebody is able-bodied, but with luckily with the tools and the things that we have available to us, resources, we can get things done. It just takes longer, and uh, we definitely need to. If we need to get rid of something, it's definitely the stereotype that people with disabilities can't amount to somebody who's able-bodied. Like there's so many people. The if I can say this, like when it comes to the workforce, people with disabilities are so underrepresented. Like currently, right now, there's only 20%. We're talking about just here in the U.S. 20% of individuals with disabilities are employed, as opposed to 17% the previous years. That's a bit of an increase, but we need to get rid of the notion of people with disabilities are lazy, they can't work, they can't do this, they can't do that. No, there's so many people with disabilities out there that are so successful in what they like to do. Like I'm a disability advocate. You're a podcaster. I'm assuming you're an author as well, right? You have your own book as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, if we ourselves can do those things and be successful, then then we can. Don't don't bring the stereotypes of oh we're lazy or we can't do things. Give them a chance. Give them an opportunity to show their skills, to show their talents and what they can do. Believe me, you'd be surprised once you give them an opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I love that. Yeah, definitely. Because you're right. The um, disability community is very underrepresented in the workforce. Um, and there's a lot of discrimination within the workplace, and thinking that people with disabilities can't do certain things, can't do certain jobs, um, which is, why I love that comment someone left earlier about knowing a RN who has CP who works better than the RNs who don't. It's like, you don't know what people are capable of until you ask or you see them do it. And we are capable of a lot. Um, so, yeah. So, my last question here, and again, if anyone has any questions they want to ask David, leave them in the chat box. And we will go ahead and read them out during the Q&A. But my last question here was, are there any books or other resources that you know of that you could recommend to writers that would help them when creating a disabled or character with cerebral palsy?
Um, as far as books, to be honest with you, I haven't really seen books or resources. I mean, resources as far as like non-profits and things like that, I could possibly, delve into. But as far as like books and things like that, I haven't really seen many books as far as like somebody with a CP is concerned.
Okay. Are there any resources that, like websites or other stuff that you know of that may help?
You could definitely look at uh, like UCP. They have a lot of information about cerebral palsy. Um, there's also this blogger that I follow. Her handle is what CP looks like on Instagram, and she is incredible. Like she shows a lot of resources about CP. She talks about her journey. She's a fighter as far as advocacy in the community, and she's always willing and able to help others. Her name is Nicole Luongo. So if you look her up, she'll definitely give you insight and information about cerebral palsy and how important it is for us to come together and to bring representation in our community. And she's done a lot.
Awesome, awesome. I will definitely, for anyone watching this live stream or the replay, I will find her on Instagram and leave the link for her Instagram below after we wrap up. So, awesome. It sounds like a really good one. I would also say I would recommend the series, the Curse Breaker series by Bridget Khmer. It's a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and the main character in that series, Harper, she has cerebral palsy. And I've seen, I'll also leave a link below to a review of someone. I saw someone on YouTube who has cerebral palsy who did a review of the first book, A Curse So Dark and Lonely. And they thought it was a really good representation of a character with CP. So I will leave the review down below. And yeah, so that's the only, as far as books go, that's the only book or series that I know that has a character with CP. So, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really good one. So, all right. So let's see here. I will check the chat box, but I didn't see any other comments or questions come in. So I guess if no one has any other questions, we will kind of wrap it up from here. So thank you so much, David, for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story and more about your experience, and for trying to get back on here after our technical issues and difficulties.
Of course, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So that's pretty much all I have for today. So thank you for everyone who joined live. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for being here. I hope this was super helpful and informative for everyone watching. And if you want to check out more interviews like this, I have a playlist listed in the description box below. And also, if any of you guys are writers watching this and you want to learn more about writing diverse characters, I also have an online course that you can take. All the links will be in the description below, as well as David's links, so you can follow him on Instagram and check out his platform, his podcast, and follow him on social media. So all of those links are down below. So thank you again. And I will see you all next month for another Right and Diversity interview. So
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been awesome. All right, bye everyone.